Dystopia warning, obviously. You know how I was telling you the other day about how the Tories, make the policies, make the laws, set the national conversation, which is then regurgitated by their friends in the right-wing media who toe the line because they want to continue to keep sending all their money offshore whilst telling us what to think and dominating the national conversation. Well, that's kind of led me to think about Keir Starmer, the current leader of the opposition. I am amazed at the amount of hatred that's levelled at him. And I want to make it really clear that this isn't me coming from a point of blind defence or emotional investment in Keir Starmer. I have no emotional allegiance to the current or the former leader of the opposition, because I don't make politicians my personal heroes. That's an idiotic thing to do. I can admire them, like I admired Gordon Brown, Texture Like Sun, because he helped bring my family out of the underclasses and gave us a bit of dignity. There's also the fact that he was mentored by John Smith, another legend. But I don't admire any populist figure. Just look at what Trump said, about walking down Fifth Avenue and shooting someone. I think there are genuinely people out there that would take the same approach for Jeremy Corbyn. And if anything, ironically, he's the person that I had more emotional investment in. I voted for him to be Labour leader, supported him wholeheartedly during 2 general elections. I kept my mouth shut on things that he did that enraged me, like his approach to Brexit. Thought he was a nice bloke. One of the most smeared politicians that I've ever witnessed. 2017 manifesto was banging. He was also flawed. And also in his long career as an MP, he opposed virtually every single other leader. Vocally. Politicians get ousted, shit happens, it's politics. Keir Starmer, again, nice enough bloke, needs to stop banging on about the bloody toolmaker thing. Probably playing a little bit too hard to the people that we need to try and get on side. These people are just frontmen. To me, leaders of the Labour Party, despite being a member, are perfunctory. The party is always about the sum of its parts. All the MPs that come from working class families that are better placed to represent our interests. The only emotional attachment that I have is the fact that I know a Labour government would be better, undoubtedly better, at looking after our interests than the Conservatives. So I'm not going to get involved in shoe pissing and talking down the only alternative to this nightmare. It's not happening, because that's not how you get people to vote for you. Now, one of the areas in which Keir Starmer is criticised is his accused of being a Tory. Don't you think if he wanted to be a Tory, it'd be a lot easier for him to just be a Tory? Why would he rise up the ranks of the Labour Party to become a Tory? Also, the policy that they've put forward, we've not seen all of it yet because obviously they've not released a manifesto because we're not had an election called, is broadly solid. Making non-DOMs pay their taxes so we can fund the NHS, mental health support within a month, reform of the House of Lords. Solid. There's also the fact that the Tories will steal Labour policy, water it down and then try and take credit for the idea. Just look at the windfall tax. A lot of people complain that they don't know what he stands for, but they're not taking into account that the people responsible for informing the people about what he might stand for are basically Tory-led. The BBC, the tabloids, all deep in the Conservatives' pockets. They control the narrative. Now, as a Remainer with Brexit, I'm not enormously happy about the stance that he's taken, but I get why he's doing it. He's drawing a line to stop the tabloid, speculation. It'd be political suicide if he started saying, yeah, we're just going to rejoin the single market. What do you think they will do to Labour if they came out and said that? We all know it's a mess. It's too early to start picking up the pieces. Firstly, the EU will not take us back. It's like going through a bitter, protracted divorce in which for 7 years you've absolutely slagged off the person you're divorcing and then just going, oh yeah, could I come back? Can I move back in? It's not going to happen. I've always maintained that leaving the EU was noisy. Noisy, divisive, headed by populist figures with vested interests. Rejoining will be quiet. You'll need someone that's not a populist figure without the vested interests that will quietly realign us with the EU. Repair the fractured relationship and start the process of fixing this absolute shit heap that the Tories have put us in. Now, there's a lot of people out there saying that Keir Starmer's destroyed Jeremy Corbyn's legacy. What legacy? He never saw power. It'd be absolutely foolish to continue the legacy, word for word, of someone that failed to win 2 elections. Although I do think it would be a good idea to echo some of the 2017 manifesto that was put forward under Corbyn because it was brilliant. But also you've got to remember the fact that it's not 2017 anymore. And that ties into my view on the pledges too. It's adapt or die. Britain is a very different place due to the Conservatives decimating the country than it was when he made those pledges in 2019. If you overpromise and underdeliver to a public that might take a chance and vote Labour, you're not going to have any ability to implement long-termist policy because they're not going to trust you and they're going to turf you out after one term. And due to the Tories tanking the economy and spaffing billions of our taxpayers' money up the wall and handing it in brown envelopes to their mates, we're going to be broke. We're going to have a mountain to climb when we win the election. And despite tanking the economy, despite ruining the country, the Tories have managed to successfully con most people into thinking that Labour are the people that are fiscally irresponsible. We don't know what we're going to walk into yet. So promising the moon on a stick is just going to erode trust. And people talk again about, writing for the Sun. I find it galling. I hate that rag. But then Diane Abbott, Ben, they did it. Because you've got to try and appeal to people beyond your promise, beyond the people that might normally vote for you. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that Jeremy Corbyn made, was preaching to the converted. You can't just speak to the people that chant your name at festivals. And another thing that I find particularly galling is people going around calling Keir Starmer kid starver, right? When has he had the power to do that? The people that have starved children for 13 years are the Conservative government. 14 million plus living in poverty, hundreds of thousands ruined by austerity, hundreds of thousands of people dead. They wouldn't even top up free school meals for kids that were living with nothing during the pandemic. The problem with this is you shift the blame from where it deserves to be, which is on the Conservatives, the people that have had the power, that have implemented the cruel policy. The opposition are irrelevant. They've not been able to do anything. And they're not going to be able to do anything if you spread hatred about someone that hasn't even had an opportunity to have a record in power based on hypothesis or based on your reverence for someone that you feel should be the leader instead. The only people it helps is the Conservatives, who sit back and laugh at the left whilst they bleed us dry because they're immoral, corrupt bastards. Ultimately, what this comes down to is the fact that it's not 5 years ago. A lot has changed. All hell has broken loose. And what we need is a capable, competent Prime Minister to help dig us out of the mess. Just look at what happened when the Tories made their mascot their leader. I want politics to be boring again so I can sleep at night. I don't want an entertainer running the country. This is an emergency, and if you've got, the ability to sit there and talk about your principles or talk about how people should earn your vote, despite the fact that first past the post doesn't care about your feelings, then you must be privileged, frankly. You must be able to afford another Tory term. But millions living in abject poverty, including millions of children, can't. So think about them when you cast your vote. And think about who you're helping when you shit on the opposition based on pure hypothesis. Heads up, it's the Conservatives.